all my chances of getting into the social blue book just fade into nothing.
Ah, don't worry, Maggie. I'll speak to the smiling Irishman. Maybe he can shove you in the used car almanac.
Jiggs!
Ah, think of your health.
My health?
Ah, I'm a dirty dog not to consider your condition. And when I think of my conduct, I'm ashamed of myself.
Jiggs, are you all right?
Sure, I'm fine. But it's you that I'm worrying about. A poor, defenseless woman protecting herself all these years with a rolling pin. Oh, I've been a brute.
Jiggs, dear, you're sweet when you want to be. You may kiss me.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
And this week we are talking about Bringing Up Father and Jiggs and Maggie Go West.
Yes.
From 1946 to 1950, based on
Bringing Up Father.
Bring Up Father. Commonly known as Jiggs and Maggie, and maybe they even changed
apparently
the title.
it later changed its title to Jiggs and Maggie, but not during the period that we were reading.
Yes, okay. So, pause the podcast.
No.
No, you don't need... So we watched these two movies on YouTube. Very rough VHS transfers.
Yes.
There is a crazy-ass twist at the end of Go West. One of the craziest things I've ever seen in any movie in my life.
Does it even count as a twist? It's just
it is.
The most bizarre...
It took me very much by surprise.
Oh, did it? Okay.
But,
it was... okay.
But I don't think it's... We're going to spoil it.
Don't watch these movies.
Especially the second one.
The ending is frankly bizarre. I don't know if it counts as a twist. I think it's apropos of nothing. It's just...
I think it's a twist. We'll talk about it when we get to it.
We sure will. I can't wait.
Okay, so Bringing Up Father debuted in January of 1913 as a daily strip. It was by a fellow named Jim McManus. He was in a bunch of comic strips at the same time, and apparently this was kind of common practice for the old fellows in these days. They would have a bunch of strips on the go. Some of them would last a few days or a week, and then they'd be like, no, gotta move on to something else.
Yeah.
And he, finally, this is the one that hit, Bringing Up Father.
Yeah,
so it was dailies until 1918, then they added a Sunday strip.
He'd had Nibsy the Newsboy was one that he did.
Yeah.
And The Newlyweds was another. You know, apparently, according to Toonpedia, which is a website.
Don Markstein's Toonpedia, yeah.
Don Markstein's Toonpedia, they were well received in their day, but you're right, he got lightning in a bottle with this one, because it ran until the year 2000.
Yes. Now, he died in 54, so he drew the strip for 41 years. He had an assistant who had a funny name, which I can't remember at the moment.
Zachary or something like that.
Yeah, or Zeekly or something. He was not given the strip.
Yeah, apparently a travesty of justice, apparently, because he knew how to draw it, and they just gave it over to a bunch of... And it limped on for another, 46 years, but everyone agrees that it never recaptured the quality that it had under George McManus.
Yeah. So almost everything I know about George McManus comes from an essay by R.C. Harvey. R.C. Harvey was one of the two big guys who are knowledgeable about the old strips. There was Bill Blackbeard and R.C. Harvey. I think Bill Blackbeard passed away a few years ago. But according to R.C. Harvey, McManus basically started working in a newspaper art department from the age of 13. And the story that's told is that he was drawing caricatures of his friends in class, and his teacher found them, and it was like thought he was going to get a beating. She sent the pictures home to show to his father. He thought his father was going to give him a beating. His father spoke to him very quietly and said, come with me, and they went to the newspaper office, and he got him a job working.
What a heartwarming story.
Yeah.
Putting him to work at age 13.
Yeah.
It wasn't a coal mine, but...
Yeah. So, at its peak, it was in 500 papers, 46 countries.
Yes. Extremely
possibly
popular
80 million readers. 2 years ago, this book came out called Comics and the Origins of Manga. It's got a Bringing Up Father panel on the front, and this book is basically all about Bringing Up Father, because Bringing Up Father came to Japan in 1923, and the author of this, whose name is Ike Exner, proposes, his thesis is that actually manga in Japan before the introduction of Bringing Up Father would be more like Prince Valiant, where you'd have captions at the bottom of the artwork would say, he said this, and then he went there, and then she said this, and they did this. Once this was introduced, they started putting in word balloons and stuff, so his argument is that manga actually would not look the way it does today if it wasn't for the introduction of Bring Up Father in 1923. It was hugely popular in Japan.
That's amazing.
It was used in advertisements and everything. His Exner's Instagram is worth looking at too, because he's got like newspaper ads. He's got a newspaper ad from 1928 in Shanghai for a restaurant called Dinty Moore's restaurant in Shanghai.
I believe it.
In 28. So it was hugely popular. There was a Japanese stage play put on, which he talks about in here.
There's another thing. There's been endless adaptations of this comic. This is like finding out about a thing that I never knew about, and then finding out that it had taken the world by storm, and now has left barely a footprint.
Well, I knew about the strip, and I have read the strip before, because it was one of the strips mentioned in the Comics Journal's Top 100 Comics of All Time, so that was a controversial list for various reasons, but I did read a lot of stuff that was on that list, including I bought a big hardcover of Bringing Up Father from the 70s or 80s. So I'd read a ton of them before, but I never knew about the movies or the radio show or all the plays or...
musicals.
Yeah.
And as you were saying about its popularity internationally, hugely successful in all sorts of places, including where, no English was spoken.
Yeah.
So it would be translated into other languages, and interestingly, the names would be changed.
Right.
As well. So in Mexico, it was Pancho and Ramona.
I love that.
Yeah. Argentina, Trifon and Sisebuta. In Italy, Archibaldo and Petronilla. And apparently hugely popular in Scandinavia, of all places. So as well as Japan, apparently, Scandinavia. The very first...
talkie?
Yes. The very first talkie... I was trying to think of another word. A less kind of dorky word. No, you're right. The first talkie of Bringing Out Father was in...
Was it Finland?
Finland,
yeah.
That's right. Where they were called Victor and Clara.
Okay.
And it was released on August 20th, 1939.
Yeah, right.
So just a month or so before the start of the Winter War between the Soviet Union and Finland. And after the start of the Second World War, actually. Yeah, nuts. Also, very popular in Norway, again. In Norway, it's a Christmas tradition to release an annual of father and son comics up to the present day. So apparently they are still releasing Christmas
annuals. Why did you say Father and Son? Is that what it's called there?
No, not Father and Son. Bringing Up Father.
Okay.
Where they're called Finnbek and Fia.
Okay.
It might help that the national dish of Norway is something called mutton cabbage.
Ah, okay. Well, we'll get to all that stuff. So, there were a bunch of animated shorts made of it. There was a bunch of two-reel movies made of it.
Yeah.
So that would be like, two-reeler would be 40 minutes, I guess, max. Or shorter.
Anyway. Watch those.
And there was a 1926 silent movie. And then we get to the movies that we're going to talk about today. But first, let's talk about the strip. We haven't talked about anything about what it's about.
We've talked about its enormous kind of media footprint.
Yes.
But what's the strip about?
So this is one of the first, what we would call unhappy marriage strips. But I don't think it's actually an unhappy marriage, rereading it this time around. But basically, it's about this Irishman who has immigrated to the U.S., to New York. He is very rough around the edges, to put it
very working
mildly.
class. Well, he was a hob carrier,
yes.
which is someone that carries bricks, so a labourer. Rough around the edges.
Yeah. Now, his wife, so somehow they become rich. It's actually, there's stories that he won the lottery. No, it's never explained in the strip how he became so rich. He's just somehow became loaded. Some people would argue this is a metaphor for old world versus new world. Anyway, whatever. His wife has aspirations to be in high society.
Yes.
So she's always trying to go to the right functions, invite the right people over, have the right, dress the right way.
Yes. And she's obsessed with having Jiggs act in a manner more befitting the station to which she aspires. Hence the title of the comic strip, Bringing Up Father.
Yeah.
Jiggs is the father. Bringing him up means bringing up his standing in the world.
Yeah. So she's trying to remold him. They have a daughter named Nora, who shows up once in a while. His main thing is he wants to live his down-to-earth life. And he wants to go to the saloon called Dinty Moore's and either have the chowder party or the corned beef and cabbage.
Corned beef and cabbage. He always wants corned beef and cabbage or a beer.
Yeah.
He usually just talks about seeing Dinty Moore.
Yeah.
Not so much going to the saloon called Dinty Moore. I didn't know that. I thought he just visited his friend a lot.
Right.
He goes, you know, he'd be like, I got to go out and see Dinty, or I got to get to Dinty's.
Yes.
And yeah. And Dinty Moore is his best friend, who it transpires owns a pub.
Yes. So he's always trying to sneak out to this place, which Maggie does not.
Yeah. She's always trying to stop him.
She doesn't want him to go, so she's trying to stop him. So he has to come up with a scheme to get out of the house, often somehow in disguise, or something like that.
Escaping out a window.
Yes.
In one strip, he calls the fire brigade, telling them there's a fire, and they bring the ladder up, and he says, "There's no fire. I just want to go to the pub. Also, can you leave the ladder because I need to get back in there?"
Yeah.
Some of these are pretty funny.
They are. And another thing is that sometimes he will succeed, sometimes he won't. If he doesn't succeed, most often you'll get a tornado of crockery thrown at his head as he's escaping. He's really good at these smash cuts.
Yes.
I like the other ones. So if he has a 4-panel strip, he'll be getting into trouble. Something will be annoying him, and then you'll have 3 panels where somebody walks into the room that's really in trouble, or he's thinking about how to get rid of this person, and you have a smash cut to an ambulance showing up, or him standing in front of a judge, or the crockery being thrown at his head.
Standing in front of a judge is brilliant.
Yeah.
There's one which I took a picture of. So this will give you a sense of what the kind of panel's going to look like. First panel is his wife on the piano. Maggie's always playing piano and she's terrible at it. He thinks to himself, or says to himself, "I wish I had a gun." Second panel, he's walking out of the room. He spies a vase. Third panel, piano with no one in front of it, broken vase on the floor. Fourth panel, morning judge. He's standing in front of the bench. Great.
Yes, absolutely.
They're not all as good as that, but the good ones are.
Some of them I didn't even get, and I wondered if it was the era, because we were reading 1919 strips, and sometimes there was even terminology that I was like, what is that?
I found that sometimes...
There was a word pin was used in some strange way. Like she said, I had to buy the pins. I was like, what does that mean? And the punchline hinged on it.
I wish I'd written down... I feel like I should have written down the ones I didn't get so that we could have discussed them. I found that some of them, it depended on a pun, the final panel.
Yeah.
So, and this is much better than Fatty Finn, where Fatty Finn was not just 4 panels.
Yeah.
It would, be like 6 or 8, and you would absolutely have lost track of what's going on by the really lame kind of denouement, or punchline. In this one, it's way better because there's only 4 panels, and it's much less verbose. It's usually, we're just getting out some snappy kind of lines of dialogue. Even so, sometimes when I got to the 4th panel, I'd forgotten what line of dialogue the pun was supposed to be referring to.
Yeah. I will say this, there are the Sundays as well. We have to talk a little bit about the art before we get to Sundays.
Please.
So, the art is it's a very clean line.
Yes.
Often you'll hear people describe it as Art Deco or Rococo or Art Nouveau or something like that. Very elaborate, especially ladies' dresses. He seemed to love drawing them.
Yes.
He loves the furniture.
Apparently he would research the women's dresses.
Right. I saw another thing where he said he would just start doodling and he couldn't stop, and then he would have this very elaborate design on a dress or something like that.
Either could be true or both.
Yes. He changes stories about stuff over the years about different things, different aspects of the strip. So it's really, the background and stuff are really lovely. Another funny thing he does is sometimes there's, if there's a piece of art on the wall, the characters in it will start moving between panels.
Yes.
So when you get to the Sundays, which are in color, they're absolutely dazzling when he draws the dresses and the mansions and all that kind of stuff. It's really pretty mind-blowing stuff. And he gets way more creative with the layouts. There's one where characters are climbing between panels as if the panels are physical objects in their world. And also we get a long series of ones where he'll go out the window and then he'll go onto like a beam, like a construction, like a building under construction. He'll be crossing beams and on the wrecking balls and all sorts of stuff, trying to go from point to point to get to Dinty Moore's.
Yeah.
It'd be a long journey to get there over crazy stuff. And sometimes he wakes up at the end, it's a dream, and sometimes it's not. It's out there on those crazy things.
The very early ones often had titles.
Yes.
I noticed. So I think similar to
Yeah, we've seen it in some other strips.
the Popeye ones.
Yes,
Thimble
that's right.
Theatre had
That's
them.
right.
That's right. But they stopped having them by I think about 1920, and they were just intended to say bringing up father after
Yeah.
that. Also, they were very episodic. So they didn't tend to have, the ones that I read at least, didn't tend to have long-running stories, at least early on. But again, that sort of started to make an appearance later on.
Yeah, especially in the Sundays. So there's like a long storyline where they go back to Rags.
Yes.
And there's also one in 1940 apparently, which is apparently the peak of the series, this one storyline, where they had to cross the U.S. from like one side to the other and stop in at least towns. And I think that might have spilled over into the dailies, I'm not sure. But
cool.
There were some like long-running storylines, especially in the Sundays. Oh, they also went over to the coronation of George the Sixth.
Yep.
Yeah, so they went over to Europe, so there's a storyline where they go to Europe, etc. in there and stuff. But that's all in the Sundays. It's not the dailies are like 4 panels.
Yes.
Sometimes there's gags and punning in the panels before you get to the punchline. Like he could have split these into 4 and got 4 days out of this strip, but quite often he's got a lot of like running gags inside the strip itself. So it's kind of I guess you could say it's a one-joke strip in a sense that he's always trying to get out of his house and then it takes different forms. Yeah, there's definitely other stuff.
Quite often the punchline will be violence of some kind.
Yeah.
Either physical violence being done or the double take. So it's people falling off chairs.
Yes. Oh, there's a lot of flop takes, as we call them. Flop takes, where you just see the person's feet at the side of the panel after they've fallen out from something crazy that probably Jiggs has said.
Another one that made me laugh is, he, as you said, he lovingly draws these young women in a style completely different to...
Yes, they're like from another strip or a different artist.
I mean, it's just, as you said, very, very elaborate, very kind of like classically beautiful.
Yeah.
With little
like
portraitures.
Yeah.
Yeah, compared to the exaggerated features of most of the other characters. Anyway, and these are the ones that Jiggs is a bit of an inveterate kind of like... Woman.
He likes looking at
girls.
Yeah. He likes looking at pretty girls.
He's never unfaithful to Maggie, but girls catch his eye.
Yeah.
And you assume he's just sort of a bit of an old charmer, because he often ends up in some kind of circumstance where he's got his arms around them or something like that. Especially when he becomes a movie producer.
Yeah.
And there's a slightly sinister aspect there.
Yeah.
Of course. But it wasn't written that way, but of course with hindsight we can see.
There's one I quite liked where he goes down to the beach and he sees these girls, these McManus girls, who look really pretty, and he's admiring their bathing suits. And you get a couple of panels, and then you get to the third panel, and it's his daughter wearing the same outfit, and he's like, he freaks out and sends her home.
The duality of man. There's a couple like that, which are really kind of timeless. Another one, Maggie's always worried about Jiggs embarrassing her, of course, because he acts so coarse and lower class, and she has aspirations. She's aspirational. Socially aspirational. And in one, Jiggs is sitting out on his veranda somewhere, I think they're on holiday, in his night shirt, or just in a singlet, and someone complains about it to Maggie, and she tells him off. And then she says, "I'm going to the beach." And of course, she's wearing... so the double standards in what constitutes decent or indecent clothing, depending on circumstances, something that we still... This was written in like 1918. It's still something which we find funny today.
Yeah. I think there's something too, the whole situation about the rags to riches, fish out of water thing.
Yes.
I mean, we've seen it in Beverly Hillbillies and what's that British sitcom? Keeping Up Appearances?
Oh, yes.
It's just like almost the same.
It's very much like Keeping Up Appearances.
Yeah.
With Mrs. Bucket.
Yeah.
Maggie is much like Mrs. Bucket. Or Bouquet, as she likes to call herself.
She likes to call herself Bouquet.
Yeah, this is very much like that.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, as I said, there's been some ink spilled online about the supposed kind of like ethnic dimension to the comic, about it being about the Irish experience in America and between kind of like so-called lace curtain Irish and working class Irish. I think take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because of how successful this has been in so many different markets, where they don't even have to have the same names, let alone the same.
I even think McManus kind of forgot that he was Irish 20 or 30 years in.
So the story goes, by the time he passed away in 1954, his Irishness was not a thing anymore. It
Right.
was just about kind of like class issues. And of course, class is universal.
Yes.
So it has a universal appeal.
Yeah. So the other thing about the art is Jiggs is shaped like a potato, and Maggie's really tall. She's a tall, skinny beanpole.
Yeah. Apparently he used to be bigger, but McManus realised it would be funnier if he was smaller than Maggie, and it would lend credence to the idea that she
they look like the number 10.
bash him.
They stand next to each other.
And his hair sticks up at the back.
Yes. Sticks straight up. Yeah.
He's a very funny looking fella.
But he's always in a tux, because she's always dressed him up.
He always wears a tux, even when it's his uniform, essentially, because he's not allowed to wear anything but a tux, I guess.
Yeah.
So that we never forget that he's kind of like nouveau riche.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it's not really a one-note strip, but I kind of describe it that way. Is there anything else we need to say about it?
No, I mean, the art's cool. The art is great.
Yeah.
They have no pupils. It's a style that I think of
Little Orphan Annie, yeah.
And of course, it precedes Little Orphan Annie.
Yeah. That in it, Little Orphan Annie is almost OCD level, like weird. It's very weird, the lack of pupils in the eyes.
This one, it's a little more stylistically appropriate and less like a zombie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my only other observation would be I decided while reading these comics that Jiggs was gay.
Interesting.
Because he's always trying to get out of the house to see Dinty. And the idea of like being around his wife and intimacy with his wife kind of unnerves him.
Yeah.
They have a working relationship, but I think perhaps because of the times, he couldn't be comfortable in his sexuality, so he had to sneak out.
That is funny. Okay, so let's get to these movies. So as I said, there was a silent movie in 26.
Yes.
Then we get this series of 5 movies, starting in 1946, running till 1950.
Yes.
They're all about an hour long, 65 minutes each.
As was typical for the time, like the Blondie
Like the
movies
Blondie
we did,
movies.
and the Red Rider ones.
Yes. And, okay, so they're starring this character
Actor. He was a character.
Yeah, Jow Yule.
Yes.
Who is the father of Mickey Rooney.
That's so.
It plays Jiggs, and what was her name? Renie Riano?
Yeah.
Was the actress playing Maggie. They really looked the part,
Yes.
I have to say.
Brilliant. He's perfect as Jiggs.
He's perfect. I would say the first 10 minutes of this first movie is pretty great.
Yes, I agree. We get... So, first thing we get, comics in the credits.
Yes.
Always a big tick for me. You love to see it on Comic Book Movie Oblivion when we have the comic strips in the credits. And the opening feels really modern.
Yeah. There's a voiceover, a narrative voiceover.
That breaks the fourth wall and is kind of talking to us.
Yeah. In a very wry way.
Yeah.
A very smart thing, talking about the class and how this is the city of New York where everybody lives together and gets along. Yeah. The only difference is if there's a class difference and suddenly there's a problem.
Yeah.
Because all the races and creeds are fine. It's there's a class problem. You get this rich guy driving around.
And he drives through a rough neighborhood and they throw stuff at him in his car and he yells at his chauffeur to get me out of this terrible neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. He arrives at this fancy building.
Yeah.
He gets out, and then we see Jiggs run down. This is a big apartment.
And his spats and his frock coat.
And there's a doorman there. He's talking to the doorman, and then a rolling pin or something gets thrown at him. And then the camera pans up or cuts, and we see Maggie standing on a ledge. outside the window ledge of this high-rise building. She's throwing this thing at him. I was like, first 5 minutes, this is great. This is exactly what it is. They look the part. Yeah. She looks really
great. And there's a great, like, the doorman says to Jiggs, "Is something the matter?" And he goes, "Ain't you got eyes? Ain't you got ears? Ain't you got a wife?"
yeah. Which is like, very like the comic.
This is so much. Yeah. I was really struck by how great it seemed. It doesn't last, though.
No. Okay, so she's standing on the ledge. He has to run up. He's running up the stairs trying to get back home. She tells him to get in the house because he's not. He's out in his shirt sleeves or something.
Right.
She's like, "Get in here." We get a little bit of fast forward of him running upstairs. I liked all this stuff too.
Yeah, it's fine so far.
He passes a character on the stairs who gives him a curious look, smiles at him, and then carries on.
Yes.
This guy keeps coming back.
Yes.
We'll talk about him later. Meanwhile, Maggie is up in her apartment. She's about to get a visitor, and the
visitor is a lady of high social station.
Right. The butler comes to get her off the ledge. She says, sorry for interrupting your bourgeois pleasure. That's how he describes it. This butler is really great too, actually. He calls her in.
He's like Jeeves. Anyway, go.
Yes, his name is Jervis? What was it? It wasn't
Jarvis, was it?
No, it was.
Why would
it was
Jarvis?
a butler name. It was a butler name for sure, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she's getting a social visit, much like in the comics, and her visitor is like, there's somebody in this building, this guy.
She'd run into him out the front and seen him in his singlet.
Yeah.
And she said, we have to be careful to guard our premises from ne'er-do-wells because you'll never believe who I ran through on the stairs, the most, dodgy looking man. And, Maggie's like, oh, yes, that's terrible. Yes, we will have to do that. And then, of course, Jiggs bursts in through the door. He does look like Mickey Rooney.
Yeah, he really does.
He's just rotund. He's a ball of energy.
So, of course, the visitor, this lady, is offended by this.
But she leaves immediately.
She leaves.
When she realizes that this is her husband.
Yeah. Jiggs gets to Dinty's somehow. How does he escape? There is a bit of there's a long scene where he tells her she needs rest. Oh, she tries to make out with him. She's like, kiss me.
This is when the film starts to get...
I was even okay with this scene where she's like, kiss me, and he doesn't want to do it.
It's about 10 minutes long.
I was okay with it.
Okay.
What I didn't like was when they got to Dinty's, because then we get the Dinty Moore's saloon is very long, and Jiggs isn't in it. There's a long sequence where he's not in it.
Baffling.
And then Dinty's nephew shows up. He's some kind of architect, and now we get a plot to tear down Dinty's.
This is, as you said, this is an hour-long movie, and this sequence in Dinty Moore's saloon goes for about an hour. Well, no, I mean, it's probably about 10 minutes, but this is 10 minutes they don't have.
They established a lot of side characters, like this guy Dugan, who never speaks.
Yeah.
And other guys, this guy's the drunk, this guy's the freeloader, this guy's this, all this stuff. The nephew comes in, he wants to tear down Dinty's and replace it with a new Flash Dinty's.
Yeah.
And there's a whole big thing. And then I was, oh my God, we're another real estate scam movie. We've had so many of these. Even Superman, The Crow. So many of these movies have some sort of real estate plot. Anyway, once Dinty realizes his place is going to be better, he's like, okay, I'm all for it.
Yeah. He's going to get 2 cash registers.
So the nephew needs financing, so he waits for Jiggs to show up. Yep. Jiggs shows up. Jiggs takes the plan. He says, I love it. He takes it. Now, he takes it back.
He thinks the nephew is courting... But this joke doesn't go anywhere. They're talking across one another. Jiggs thinks the nephew wants to court Nora.
Okay.
And the nephew thinks that Jiggs is embracing his plan for...
Oh, see, I was confused about it. I thought he already knew this guy and he was already courting Nora at some stage.
No, that's what this bit is. But it's just really poorly put together.
Okay.
And they don't follow through with it properly. Because then we have another sequence, like terrible jokes. It reminds me of... You remember the dance scene in Harold Teen?
Yeah. Where
we just have a big room full of people and it's a chance to go from couple to couple.
I thought of that exactly. Yeah. It was this the diner, the soda shop scene.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that.
Yeah, there was the soda shop scene and the dance scene later on. Just kind of like an excuse to get people in a room so that you can have kind of like lame knock jokes.
Yeah.
Kind of. So they tell them and then... So apropos of nothing, so they're not related to the scene, they're not related to the story. It's just like, George McManus thought of a joke. He wrote this film, incidentally.
Did he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
Okay,
or at least he contributed to writing it. So he's not like a producer or something.
Well, those gags in the first 10 minutes, all before Dinty's,
he's credited as writer. He's credited as a writer, yeah.
All right.
And these jokes just, again, as I say, they come from nowhere, they're not related to anything. It's lame.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all pretty dead. So he takes the plans home. These not blueprints. It's more like a artist's rendition of what it's going to look like. 10th Avenue.
Yeah.
So he takes the stuff home. Now, for some reason, the woman who was visiting him, the apartment before, is in there. Nora's in there with her kind of boyfriend, the guy that's trying to woo her, and he takes
his junior. He is the son of that woman that took such umbrage.
And the man, his name was Kermishaw. Was their name? The family name of those 3.
Right. And the man, I forget how he's related. Is he the landlord?
There's Dad Kermishaw.
Yeah.
There's the son Junior, and then there's the wife. And for some reason, they want to tear down Dinty Moore's, which Dinty Moore has already agreed to.
He has
with his
property
nephew.
or something. No, he doesn't want... I think maybe he has property on 10th Avenue as well. It's not clear, but he's opposed because he's evil. And his son's
the son is evil because he even says out loud, like, we believe in dishonesty or something like that.
And the mother, of course, is an unpleasant kind of Karen.
She's kind of against them, but then she goes along with their plan. Like, she facilitates their plan because she gets
well, they
this
don't
petition
with
small print that says they will condemn Dinty Moores as being like for public like being a public nuisance or something like that,
and also that they will give up alcohol.
Right. So Maggie's into this. So she's like, all right, I'll get...
Because she wants nothing more than for Jiggs to stop drinking.
That's right, and going to Dinty Moore's. So
going to see
he doesn't know what it is. That's something else at the top of the petition. So he signs it. He takes it to the Dinty's. Very long sequence of everybody signing this thing.
Including the mysterious man again.
This mysterious man shows up. He signs it. Everybody has there's some gag about the way they sign it. It just goes on forever. It's very long.
There's a bloke... Well, yeah, it's so long. One guy has it's all like jokes about them not being, I guess, being sort of like barely literate.
Yeah.
And it's well-meaning, I suppose. It's not really mean-spirited.
No, not at all.
One guy called Jim Ryan has a tattoo on his arm of a heart with Jim Ryan written in it.
Yeah.
And he has to look at his arm really closely as he's signing the thing.
And he even draws
also draws the heart. Yeah. That's a fun little thing.
Yes.
There's also quite a good song here, the like a barbershop song, the Mush Begins to Rush.
Yeah, there are two
best.
songs, and there's also the Corned Beef and Cabbage song, which Jiggs sings, which has a tune from something else, which I couldn't remember.
I didn't recognise it, but I did like that barbershop quartet bit.
Yeah.
Then, so then they've all signed the petition.
And then there's a whole gag with the saloon doors where the mystery man and Jiggs keep passing each other, and they're like, "Who are you?" And the guy just smiles at him and walks away mysteriously.
Then everyone's really happy with Jiggs for saving the bar. No, not saving the bar. For ensuring that the bar's going to be upgraded, and they're going to have a party in his honour.
Yeah.
So Jiggs goes home. We have another really long sequence where he's getting dressed.
Yes, that was annoying. But we do get Maggie singing here, playing the piano, and it was great.
Well, I don't know.
I couldn't stop laughing at this bit. And I love when and then Jiggs has some problem in the bathroom, so he's banging on the pipes to get the plumber to come up.
Well, he doesn't have a problem.
That's right. He just wants the plumber to come up.
He wants the maintenance man. So this is like a maintenance man down in the basement, I think.
Yeah.
Is he listening to the baseball?
Yes.
Anyway, he's very invested in the baseball.
He's constantly upset about
So Jiggs keeps banging on the pipes, because this is his scheme to get out of the house. This is very much like the comic.
Yeah.
So the plumber comes up and they swap clothes.
Yes. But that banging is happening while the singing is happening, while Nora and her boyfriend he's trying to woo her, and he's trying to talk about
It's not the boyfriend, it's Junior, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Junior. Yeah. He's trying to woo her. He's like, your voice is like the sweet chimes or something. Meanwhile, there's this racket going on. And
it's really over
there is a funny line from the butler too, where he comes in and he says something. He comes into Maggie while she's playing and singing, and he says something like something about the pipes, and it actually landed as a gag. It was pretty good. And then the architect, the nephew, Dinty's nephew, shows up and mistakenly thinks that Nora has agreed to marry Junior.
Yeah, he's trying to set up a love triangle.
Yeah.
Because I guess but he wasn't courting her, but he started courting her because of the confusion with Jiggs. But we've never seen that established, because we spent, 3 days on signing the petition.
Yeah.
So at some point, a love triangle has come about. So the architect, Junior, and Nora, but there's no setup.
No.
And there's not really any payoff either.
No.
I think Jiggs later tells the architect to go and talk about who should be with Nora with Junior like a man, and if that doesn't work, he should punch him.
Yes.
Which he does.
Yeah.
Oh, I should say at this point that this film's editing is very, very rough. And I don't think it's all the VHS transfer. We've talked a bit about this. They just banged these films out, like 40 a year.
Yeah.
And this particular studio, Monogram, was not one of the bigger Hollywood studios of the period. In fact, it belonged to what they called Poverty Row.
Ah, okay.
Not a specific place.
Right.
But it's one of the cheaper, smaller studios.
Right.
And so specialised in things like comedies, crime films, and, you'll be unsurprised to hear, westerns.
Right. Okay.
We'll be coming back to that.
Yeah. So, so the Junior wants Jiggs' permission to ask for Nora's hand, but the plumber's in there hiding in bed. it's not actually Jiggs. So we get a bit of a sequence about that. Then we find out so the sheriff shows up at the saloon to shut it down because of the petition.
Yep.
And one of the guys says, "You've committed Irish Harry Carey." For signing his own because didn't he sign the petition to close himself down?
Yeah. They tell him they're very angry with him. They tell him a shamrock would wither on your coat.
Yeah. So basically, Jiggs sets up he's ostracized for having orchestrated this, but he sets up a counter petition to cancel the first petition. So that's very quickly dealt with.
Yes.
But then Junior hires some roughs to go in there and cause a public disturbance.
Yes.
To get the place shut down. But they find out they're related to one another. Related. They're like, hey, no. But then there's still a bar fight at the end.
The worst bar fight ever.
Yeah, I don't even know if I really registered it beyond the words bar fight. I just wrote down bar fight on my notes.
So terrible.
Yeah.
Just terribly shot.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And just no like people just sort of stomping around one another. Terrible. Just woeful.
Yeah. And then I can't remember quite how it...
the ending is with Mystery Man. That's how it ends.
Oh, the Mystery Man. That's right. So the Mystery Man turns out to be George McManus himself, playing himself. And he is like... Jiggs is like, so you're the man that's been drawing pictures of me in the newspapers. And sure enough, he pulls out a drawing. He's got a drawing he's carrying with him of Jiggs and Maggie.
Yeah.
And it's so... Now we learn that in this final moment of the film, that Jiggs is a cartoon character in this universe. Like, there's a cartoon of him in the newspapers.
Yes. Well, I suppose...
Because he's like,
I think it's more meant to be a kind of like a wink.
Sure.
Kind of like,
of course it is.
Well, yeah. Well, or is it because of what happens in?
Yeah, it's more than it's more than a wink because this guy has been coming back again and again in the movie. He even steals a cab from him on stage.
Yes.
This is like a
cab, he signs the position.
This is like Stanley times a million. It's like amped right at, like he's there and you're like, who is this guy? And I kind of knew. I mean, George McManus' name is in the opening credits.
Yeah.
So you know he's in the movie.
As acting in the
film. And I've seen
yeah.
pictures of him, and I'm like, okay, that's got to be him.
Yes. But I think, at this point, it's just...
It's just a gag.
A kind of... A gag.
Yeah.
It's not saying something about...
No.
It's not world building.
No. It's not like that Brenda Starr business.
No. No.
Okay. So that's kind of how it ends. Now...
On to... So,
as I said, so I like the first 10 minutes of this.
Yeah.
And anytime they were in the apartment, and anytime Maggie was in it, it was actually pretty good. Like, I like the piano scenes, all that kind of stuff. Okay.
I did. I also like the first few minutes as well.
Yeah.
First 10 minutes, I'll be generous. Yeah. But after that, oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy, it was getting really boring.
Okay, so 1950, we get the fifth and final of these movies. Now, as I said, the three in between, they're not on YouTube. I couldn't find them anywhere.
Fine.
I found one website that was, as I mentioned at the end of last week, I found a website that was selling Jiggs and Maggie in court, I think, which is maybe the third one. But they wanted like $65 shipping. So no. So that exists, and somehow nobody's put it on YouTube. Okay, so this one...
I think it's a bloody miracle someone's put these ones on YouTube, frankly.
It really is, actually.
So this one, okay.
So I think it starts with a will reading. Maggie has inherited a gold mine from her grandfather and a town. Like, he had this old
Grandpa
town.
McGillicuddy or something.
Yeah. He had a town and a gold mine, which we don't know where the gold mine is. But don't worry about that, because Grandpa's ghost shows up in the lawyer's office to tell her. I'm like, immediately, on the first 5 minutes, I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
This is crazy town.
Yes.
There's a ghost in this movie?
Yes.
An actual ghost. And it's really like cheapo special effects, like the door opens, the chair rocks, the camera just moves up and down, and you get some like xylophone sound effects.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, the magic
harp,
sound.
Yeah,
like
the harp.
A harp. Yeah, that's it.
The xylophone comes in when the guy's running away later in the movie. Anyway, you get a harp sound effect. Woo! So you know there's a ghost in the room. And he can speak, and only Maggie can hear this ghost.
It's so lame.
Yeah.
You know,
also,
when, you know, a TV show, something has been going too long.
Yeah.
When you get crossovers.
Yeah.
When you get cameos.
Yeah.
When you get fantastical things, like little aliens that only you can hear, like Fred Flintstone. And, and lastly, kind of like outlandish fish out of water genre stories.
I would also say Back to the Future 3 goes in that same boat. Because as soon as you go to Western for your final thing, you're like... You're done.
Cat's out the bag, because that's what's happening here.
Yeah. Also, my problem, first 5 minutes, I'm like, they're already rich. Why does she need this gold mine that she doesn't even know where it is?
Yeah.
Why do
does
we
she
have
care
this?
about a gold mine?
Also, to have all of them go, because they go to this town and it's like they've gone back in time. It's bizarre. They haven't just gone to this.
This is 1950.
Yeah.
You know, Jiggs and Maggie aren't in the past.
No. Why is it?
We
Why
can
is
see
it
them
like
in
the
a
Old
car.
West? It's crazy.
You know, so this town is the Old West, yeah. Well,
but
we
that, to
eventually
me,
find out why, I guess.
to have all three of them in the Old West violates the premise of the strip.
Yes.
Which is this poor couple that have suddenly become rich and they're in New York and one guy can't get it together. He wants to live like the old days.
That's right. You pick up you pick up your characters and plop them down in a fish out of water story, you're running out of ideas.
Now, even then, I would say very early on, he did that strip where they, as I mentioned before, where they all go back to rags for several Sundays in a row, and they're trying to live poor, and she's kind of doesn't mind it that much. She kind of is making do. But somehow, I think McManus is a bit of a genius in terms of comedy writing, and he was able to pull that off. But this is just like...
He's credited as writer.
He's not a writer on this one. I definitely... Maybe you're looking at IMDb.
On IMDb, he's credited
okay,
as
so
writer.
that's... We've been over this before. IMDb lists the creator even if they didn't write the screenplay.
Right. No, he's
definitely not listed in the credits of the movie.
He's listed as
a writer.
starring in the...
He is, yes. He is listed in the opening credits again. I was like, where's he going to show up in this one?
And I'd since read, so before I'd even watched this one, I watched one earlier in the week and I watched the other one later in the week. And in between, I'd read online that McManus appeared in 4 out of these 5 monogram films.
Yeah.
So I knew he was going to show up. And then, sure enough, in the credits, shows that he's acting, and he's got top billing.
Yeah.
He's got top billing along with Jow Yule and Renie.
Yeah, that's what people want. He was really famous. He was like a famous cartoonist. I guess he was a saleable commodity, I guess. His name in the credits is like going to bring people through the door. I guess, you know what?
Surely not.
I would say it's one of the, maybe, let me put it this way instead. They don't have much going for them at this stage, and that's one of the things that they can try to sell. Come in and see George McManus. So, yeah, so they arrive, they're already rich. The premise of the strip has gone out the window. They arrive in this old-fashioned Western town. There's a stagecoach gunfight right off the bat. By the way, the head bad guy... Snakebite Carter, played by Jim Bannon.
Who
Red
played
Rider.
Red Rider in Ride, one of the films we did.
The last 4 or 5 Red Rider movies. He was the 3rd Red Rider.
That was amazing. And he's credited it as Jim Red Bannon.
Yes, because he became so affiliated with... Well, maybe they tried to affiliate him with that role.
Again, as you say, they're scraping the bottom of the barrel by this point.
Yeah.
Anything to get people in the studio.
Yeah.
In the cinema, rather, to see this film.
Yeah.
Well, we got George McManus.
So basically
Jim Red Bannon.
Yeah, so we get to the town. There's 2 factions fighting to get this gold mine. But they're half-brothers. There's Snakebite Carter, and there's another guy who's like the handsome guy that starts wooing Nora.
And Nora is really...
The bad guys are answering to somebody called the Big Boss. Who is trying to...
They often talk about the Big Boss.
The Big Boss. The Big Boss wants us to do this or that. So they move into, I guess, Grandpa's house.
Yeah, it's dilapidated.
The Big Boss has sent one of his cronies, this old coot.
He's called Hawkeye, isn't he?
Yeah, Hawkeye. He's this old guy who, stir up trouble. I'm not sure what he's there for. Meanwhile, Maggie is sometimes talking to this ghost, which tells her where to find the mine. The ghost doesn't quite know where it is. But
the ghost is the most... bizarre voice acting too.
Sounds like W.C. Fields, like somebody's doing a W.C. Fields impression. Yeah.
Hello there, Maggie. I've been shoveling coal.
By the way, the ghost physically exists because she can slap him and step on his toes and stuff.
Yes, and he interacts with his environment, as you said. He opens doors.
Yeah.
He lifts tablecloths.
He sits in rocking chairs. Ooh, spooky. Rocking chairs moving. Nobody in it.
It's just so wacky. Meanwhile, Jiggs has sent a telegram back to...
This is a thing. I was like, so when this... Back to Dinty. I was watching this going okay, we've thrown out the whole premise, and we've also thrown out Dinty Moors, which is a big thing. Well, what do? They actually bring all of Dinty Moors to this western town.
Yeah. Now, you remember what I was saying earlier about Jiggs and Dinty Moor? Did you read the telegram?
No. Oh, maybe. Yeah, what did it say?
Here, lonesome without you. I'd rather see you than all the gold that's in Gower Gulch. Yeah. So that's about all I could read on the screen, but that's, they're very good friends.
So Dinty brings everybody, the whole crew, including Dugan and everybody else,
So
all those characters.
All these tedious randos from the bar have come.
They set up a new saloon. In a matter of hours, they get with a full dance, the chorus line of dancing girls.
Yeah, dancing
within
girls.
minutes.
Like beer, food, furnished
and it's
saloon.
just heaving. With
How did this happen in a day? Whatever.
I don't know. Then he's even set up wrestling. They have this. There's a big.
No, that's really up too. They're
sequence.
credited as well at the start. You know, like wrestlers. These two
They
guys.
must be
I'm like,
famous wrestlers that they brought in for this movie.
Yeah.
And then there's a big bar fight. This is 2 out of 5. I wonder how the other 3 movies ended.
I'm sure everyone had a bar fight because everyone had Dinty Moore and all of these colourful, hilarious characters. There's a really long sequence with the wrestlers wrestling and you know people are betting on the wrestlers. And
Yes, and Jiggs ended up refereeing the match. He's forced into it by Snakebite. Snakebite at gunpoint wants his guy to win and is making sure that Jiggs doesn't count him out.
Right.
So this goes on for a very long time until the good Carter brother takes the gun out of his hand. By the way, there is shooting of guns out of hands in
I
this
noticed
movie.
that, just like Red Rider.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you need to disarm your...
You know,
it's funny, all these guys are absolute crack shots.
Besides Back to the Future, the other thing this made me think of was Moonraker. Because that was like, you know, at the end of Spy Who Loved Me, it says James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. The next movie is Moonraker. 1978? Why? Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
And the Broncos was like, we gotta make a Star Wars movie. Get this out there ASAP. I wonder if the Westerns are so popular, or maybe Monogram just had all the sets.
That would be my theory. But you finish your thought.
But it was like, the Westerns are probably better cram a Western in here. Better cram it into the Jiggs and Maggie storyline.
For me, I think this is more like the Star Trek TOS episode where they go to the Western set.
Yeah.
Because there were Western, they had, you know, Desilu had access to a Western set. I think in this case, so...
I'm sure I've seen that saloon in other movies.
You definitely would be, well, I'd probably...
Like the interior when the dancing girl's up there, I'm like, I've seen this set.
Well, Monogram, so they had this ranch, so despite being on Poverty Row, they did have access to a ranch, which they rented, which was called Monogram Ranch in California. It still exists.
Okay.
It's changed hands a few times since then, as well as names. It's now called Melody Ranch, but it's still in use. Some scenes from Django Unchained were shot there in 2012.
Okay.
It also has a museum on site that is open all year round.
Okay, so I think there's a big gunfight at the gold mine. The big boss has finally ordered them to...
Well, no, hang on. First of all, okay, so you're making it sound like makes way more sense than it does. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, first of all, Maggie has had a hilarious scene where her grandfather shows up when there's another man. Hawkeye's hiding under a table pretending to be grandfather, and then grandfather comes in and reveals that he's not grandfather, and it's just as dumb as it sounds. Yeah. Anyway, he says that she has to meet him out on the mountains the next day, and then he'll show her where the gold mine is, because he still doesn't quite remember where it is. They all go up, Nora and Jiggs as well, but at some point Jiggs takes off and goes back to the bar, and Maggie's up there by herself. Grandfather's ghost shows up again, harps. Basically, this is shown with like some rock. Someone pushes some rocks off over a small hill, and it rolls down, and then like part of a bush rolls down as well. And then Grandpa arrives, Maggie, and he starts to tell her about where the gold mine is. But then Snakebite Carter shows up, with some of his boys, and then this ghost just says, "Well, gotta go. Can't tell you where the gold mine is while them Carter boys are around." And then he just leaves. And Maggie's going, "Grandpa, Grandpa!"
That might be the last time we see Grandpa.
It is. He never comes back, and it's never resolved. Nothing's resolved with him. Anyway, Maggie, she's pretty funny, but man, she sure does shriek a lot. "Grandpa, Grandpa!" And then, the Snakebite boys have her at gunpoint. "You gotta tell us where the gold mine is, sister." And she's like, "I'm not going to tell you where the gold mine is." And then the good Carter shows up, Ned, along with his posse, and he tells Snakebite's crew to get off her. Then Jiggs and the Irish show up in a wagon and come out. Doogie's who's a character who doesn't speak. I guess that's what's funny about him.
Yeah, Dugan.
Dugan, he's the sheriff.
He was given Grandpa's badge by Jiggs for some reason.
So that he could get a beer.
Oh, right.
Because Dinty had banned him from the saloon.
Okay.
Back in New York, and which also included the saloon in California, I guess. And there's a long sequence that's nothing to do with the plot where Jiggs decides he's got to get his little friend a beer.
It doesn't matter if the sequence doesn't have anything to do with the plot, but the jokes have to land.
Yeah, and it absolutely
doesn't. None of the jokes in this one land, whereas in the first one, the jokes were...
so bad.
Some of those jokes were landing, especially in the Jiggs and Maggie scenes.
I would say so. I agree. Some of them were... The ones that were...
Like, there's one here where... the first time Hawkeye comes into the house, he hides behind a curtain, and Jiggs comes out, thinks he's a ghost, and he shoots him with a gun, and Maggie comes out and says, "Don't shoot Grandpa, you might kill him." It's that kind of joke.
Yeah.
Which is like...
Well, or later on with the old man under the sink where, he sneezes and she's like, "Why did you sneeze, Grandpa? You're a ghost." And he goes, "I think I've got pneumonia." And she says, "Pneumonia? You're a spirit. They can't get pneumonia." That's the gag.
Yeah, he says spiritual pneumonia is his answer or something. That's the gag, I guess.
And then, she says, "I'll get you some mustard and camphor or something to help you start." And he goes, "What are you, mustard and camphor? Are you trying to kill me?" Again.
What do
you mean? How can I kill you? You're a ghost. This is
yeah.
These are the jokes.
And then Grandpa, in the same scene, Grandpa says the thing where they sent me away somewhere. He's not supposed to be visiting Earth. He says they sent me away somewhere
Shovel
cold.
Coal.
You should see my calluses.
No. Shoveling coal.
Oh. Shoveling coal. Okay, not so.
They're making him shovel coal.
Okay, never mind. Rewind. I
was talking about the mad ending.
Yeah.
So everyone's in the same place. Then the two brothers say, "Well, we'd better take her to the big boss then, because the big boss says she's got to talk." Or
no,
something.
the big boss says it's time to settle this or something like that.
Right. And then, Ned, the good guy, says, "Well, if you're going to see the big boss, I'm going too." And then, as the more astute among you will have figured out, the big boss is, of course...
I did not see it coming.
I saw it coming, but only because I'd read that he does cameos, and I knew that it couldn't be anyone else. But, whatever. I mean, anyway, so it is George McManus, and here's where things get really weird.
Yeah.
So things get really strange now. How do we even explain this? Do you want to have a go?
Basically, he reveals that she comes in and she's like, "George McManus," she knows who he is.
Yes. Because they've met, haven't they?
They have met, but more than that, it's beyond that.
Yep.
This is like Grant Morrison's Animal Man, is what this is like. So she comes in, she's like, "George McManus." He says, "Yes, I visited a ranch a while ago, and I wondered what it would be like to put you and Jiggs into
cowboy outfits.
In cowboy outfits in a western."
And then he shows a picture of them in cowboy outfits.
So he's
drawn them in cowboy outfits.
Yes, and he has put them into this. He's not only put the comic characters, he's put these actors, these characters, these beings into this world. He's able to control them like a god.
Maybe, but also, okay, so that's one answer. But on the other hand, the Carter brothers are not evil and not enemies. This is their ranch, their dude ranch.
Yeah.
So a dude ranch is where city slickers come and get to pretend to be cowboys because you're raising dudes instead of raising cattle. So this is a dude ranch, and he's brought them into his plan. If he's like a reality warper and can make anything happen because he's the
Grandpa's ghost,
because he's also, where's the ghost come from? If he's Grant Morrison, why does he need a dude ranch? Why doesn't he just conjure one out of nothing? Why does he need people? None of it. So none of it makes it. How does he make?
How much is real and how much is made?
There's no what's real and what's not. So there's no gold mine because Maggie says you had me running around the hills looking for a gold mine that didn't exist. Okay, but the ghost existed.
Yeah.
What, the gold mine was fake, but the ghost was real?
Yeah.
What the So it just...
Yeah.
It's the maddest ending, and it completely unsatisfying, because it's just...
I have to say, this is an hour and 5 minutes. The first hour and 3 minutes, I was like, this is terrible. This last 2 minutes, I was like, what the fuck is this? And also, I was really looking forward to talking about it tonight, because this is material.
Yes,
This is absolute material. Like, what is going on here? I'm so glad I saw this movie for the last 2 minutes, because I'm like, I cannot believe it. I've never seen a movie where at the end, the writer of the movie, or the creator, he didn't even write the script, comes out and says, I made all this up, and I'm like controlling your existence.
I just wanted you to see you in a cowboy outfit. That amused me. So I set all this up with my friends here at this ranch that I stayed at. And also I made the ghost. But he never says that. No. But Maggie definitely says that the mine is not real.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe that explains why there's an old west town in modern California. Well, I say modern.
It has
1950s California.
It has to, because they show up there
But if it's a dude
And it
ranch...
starts with the stagecoach fight, and there's no law. Like, people are shooting at each other.
Well, the town's empty, but then it's not empty. Then everyone, all the Irish come in by train, I suppose, and, you know, and soon they're in their outfits too. They're all dressed like... Everyone's dressed like a cowboy.
Yeah. Which is also not what the strip is about. He should be in a tuxedo. You know what I mean? Like, it's so...
It's very crap.
Yeah.
And the ending...
It was a real, like, it stinks of desperation, is what I would describe it as. And
When
yet, I guess the fourth one must have made enough money that they were like, let's do a fifth.
But yeah. But you know, they just crank them out. This was like...
Yeah.
This is like television. You know, you have good and bad episodes. They don't care. They're already on to the next thing.
You know, after...
This one is really roughly edited too.
After Blondie, I don't know if you remember, I said this, we did the first one and the last one, number 1, number 28. And after that, I was like... I can't remember if I said it in the episode, but I was like, that was unfair. Yes. We should have done the first two when they were at their peak and people wanted to see more of them.
Yes.
And I'm like, if we had had the first 5 of these, because they're not available, I would have watched the first 2. Some I've watched the first, probably the best one, I'm guessing.
But the other thing is, there's only 4 years between, or 4 or 5 years between these two films.
Yeah.
I think it's just luck that the first one holds up better.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But it must have been good enough to spawn 5 more. Well, I don't know. I guess they weren't that expensive to make, but still, I don't know. Don't know.
It's just one of 50 movies that the studio put out or 100 movies that they put out in that period.
Yeah.
You know, they're just cranking them out, and the editing is so rough, especially even more so in this second one.
I would say also the other thing was I thought it's interesting that you said that thing about Monogram because I was incorrect because I had a kind of thought that I was like, did it switch studios to go from the first Bring a Father to Go West because they're so different? I was like, what happened? It really felt like when Cannon took over the Superman movies and you got Superman 4 and you're like, oh my god, what is this? Yeah, so I'm a bit shocked to see it was all one, to hear that it was the same studio putting all 5 out because there's a world of difference, I feel like, between
quality
these two.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, as you say, you know the rot set in when you start shoving your characters in a genre they don't belong in.
Yeah.
Cameos. So this cameo is different from the one in the first film, which was almost Hitchcockian in its kind of like subtlety and wink to the audience. This one on the other hand, he's just boldly stating, I thought it would be funny to put you in a cowboy outfit, and that's why this happened.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. No resolution.
No resolution whatsoever. Just unbelievable.
How very strange. And you know what the other strange thing about it too is that he didn't write this movie, but it's like he's endorsing it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
By sitting in this chair and delivering these lines as if he wants to see them in Western setting. I bet you he never did it. If he did a Western strip, it would be one Sunday where they, for some reason, were doing cowboy stuff. It wouldn't be a sequence of 10 weeks or something like that. Yep. But it doesn't seem like something he would endorse, but he is oddly...
Well, he liked money, apparently.
I guess.
Like Al Cap. Well, he made 2 fortunes from...
Yes.
This
he
comic.
was possibly...
One which he lost in the stock market in the Great Depression in 1929, the crash of 29, but then he just made it all back again.
But apparently he was making $104,000 a year, which would have possibly made him the highest paid cartoonist of all at the
more
time.
Than good old... Well, another Al Cap who also liked money and was writing kind of at a similar time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like Al Cap, he was something of a kind of like public figure as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Enough so that people were
Well, I think cartoonists in those days kind of were a bit more...
One other thing that happens in that final scene is that Jiggs says that he's going to give up alcohol and... Well, he says he's never going to... He's cranky at Dinty Moore because, George McManus enlisted Dinty Moore into the scheme as well. So hang on.
He does say that.
Jiggs and Maggie need to be kept in the dark.
Yeah.
Or could be kept in the dark by his power over events. But Dinty Moore needed to be brought in.
But Jiggs sent that telegram.
Yeah, Jiggs sent the telegram.
How does any of this work?
It doesn't. We're wasting time even discussing
It's like, I was just going to mention, there's so many movies where they tag on a twist ending to, like, after the movie's made, to try, but then it just ends up pulling everything right. I'm thinking of...
No, because it had the references to the boss throughout.
Yeah, it did. It certainly did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you thinking of, an example of that kind of film?
I was thinking of the horrible comedy version of The Stepford Wives, where there's like a twist at the end. Yeah, where you're the lucky one. There's a twist at the end that makes the rest of the movie make no sense.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. Not like it was great.
I was saying, Jiggs says he'll never set foot in Dinty's saloon again, and that's promise he kept, I guess, because it's the last film. And also, Jow Yule actually died of a heart attack before this film came out, so it was released posthumously.
So, do you think there would have been more?
Good question.
Like, was the only reason... Because it did seem like Mickey Rooney was trying to take it over in some capacity.
Yeah, there was talk about reviving it in the... With Mickey Rooney in the role in, I think, the late 70s, early 80s, but that didn't eventuate. I don't know. I mean, McManus himself passed away in 1954, and I think this studio also shut its doors. Well, it was acquired in a merger or something not too long. I think maybe in the 60s, early 60s. So, I don't know. Maybe there might have been one or two more, but I think it was definitely running out of steam. The rot had set in.
Yeah. Any trivia?
Sure. Much like Blondie, we have some food connections here.
Oh.
And Sad Sack. So, sorry, not Sad Sack. Harold Teen with the G-Dunks. Apparently, so a Dinty Moore is a kind of sandwich.
Okay.
Like a Reuben-style corned beef sandwich in Detroit. There was also a line of canned vegetables or canned dinners called Dinty Moores. And interestingly, there was a restaurateur called James Moore, whose restaurant was a favourite of McManus, and they knew one another.
Okay.
James Moore claimed, or convinced himself, that he was the inspiration for Dinty Moore.
Okay.
Apparently legally changed his name to Dinty Moore. And changed the name of his restaurant to Dinty Moore's and started a restaurant chain. Apparently that was a chain of restaurants that existed for a while, Dinty Moore's. Finally, the corned beef and cabbage, which is the favourite of Jiggs. He's always trying to get his corned beef and cabbage. It's his favourite meal. Apparently, corned beef and cabbage, or at least boiled beef and vegetables, is called Jiggs dinner in Newfoundland.
Interesting.
And it's eaten on Sunday.
Okay, never knew that.
Well, you're not from Newfoundland. No. but yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought you'd appreciate that. I don't have too much more to discuss. Yeah, Don Markstein said that when this strip finished on May 28th, 2000, it was the longest running daily strip in the world. At that point.
Okay.
May have been surpassed since then.
Yes, by Gasoline Alley.
Right.
I think for sure.
By Gasoline Alley.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll be getting to that.
So Gasoline Alley's still running?
Yeah.
Okay. And apparently he based it on a play he saw. So he came up with the concept.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, he based it on a play he saw in St. Louis when he was a boy.
Yeah.
In the 1890s. It was called The Rising Generation, about a specifically Irish family's difficulty coping with sudden riches. So it's like you said, this is kind of a timeless theme. The fact that it was an Irish family is beyond a coincidence, but we know that this strip, this character dynamic, been enormously popular in all sorts of markets. It's not specifically about the Irish experience in America, but rather about kind of like timeless differences because of social class. Well, I say timeless, I mean differences of social class associated with the modern world, the capitalist world, post-feudal modern era.
Yeah.
Right, shall we do our votes?
Yeah. Okay, the strip for me is a big yay. It's one of the classics, so I would probably avoid saying a nay anyway. But I think it's beautifully drawn.
Yeah.
Often really funny. As I said, the Sundays are amazing, especially. He got more inventive as he went along especially with the Sundays, and really quite often laugh out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found myself laughing at a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. As you say, yeah, well drawn. It's so clean and tidy.
Yeah. Something else.
It's not cluttered the way some of these strips are.
Yes, and something else, because I did mention the unhappy marriage strips. Those are really, the real unhappy marriage strips are really miserable to read, like the Andy Caps. Whereas you do get the sense that Maggie, if she forgives him, he's fooled her into thinking he's a good boy, she's like, oh, I love my Jiggs. So there's a kind of sweetness to it, too, which is appealing and makes it easy to read. You don't get the sense that they hate each other. She just doesn't want him to go out, and she throws furniture at him.
I still like my my alternative reading.
Yes, okay. Yes, that too.
But yes, for me it's also a yay. A less full-throated yay, but in comparison to some of these other strips, contemporaneous strips that we've read, man, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I don't know if it's quite as good as Thimble Theatre, which I also voted yay for. But,
I think Thimble Theatre is probably, I would rank that higher for sure.
But this one certainly was certainly.
But it's kind of similar, like a low-class dude with somebody who's maybe aspiring to be higher. I don't know if Olive Oyl was aspiring for more, but she was classier than Popeye was anyway.
Sure.
Okay, so these movies. So first one, go on YouTube, watch the first 10 minutes. Scrub through and look for that piano scene. I really dug that. Otherwise, it's pretty much I have to give it an A, although I do like those bits that I mentioned. Yeah.
It was very promising, but it's an A for me as well.
Yeah, it was such a bummer when they got to the Dinty scene, because I was actually enjoying it.
Yeah, and it just, from then on, it just kind of dragged.
Yeah.
Terrible jokes.
And I'd enjoyed reading the strips, and I got to this movie, and then I was laughing at the first part of the movie, and then it dropped off, and I thought I was going to have a good run, you know?
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
And the less said about the second one, the better.
Yeah, really awful.
Just terrible.
But, okay, the question of adaptation.
All right.
I actually kind of think that first movie is a yay for me, the first one. I actually think it's close, except for the interminable saloon scenes. They've really nailed the look and the feel of the characters and the gags, the type of gags, the punny kind of stuff, all that kind of stuff is in there.
Okay, good. I think that Jow Yule as Jiggs is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, he just seems like, he's a perfect Jiggs.
Yeah.
And Renie
Riano?
Renie Riano, 'cause her name was Irene, so it's Renie.
Okay.
Riano is also great as Maggie. There's just so much crap as well, though. All of these kooky characters, I mean, the comic strip had some great characters in it, I suppose, but they didn't have
mostly snooty people that show up.
It didn't have this stable of his working class mates who
right.
showed up every strip.
It was a different bunch almost every time.
So for me, the only things that are good about these films are the parts that are exactly like the strips.
Yes.
In that case, I'm going to say nay.
Yeah.
Because I feel...
Oh, well, the second one is a hard nay.
Oh, yeah.
Huge nay. It's so unlike the comic.
Yeah. So it's only good when it's exactly like the comic, and that's not what I consider to be a good adaptation. So that's nay for me.
Okay, so please like, rate, review, subscribe.
Very good.
On whatever platform
I'm going to get that tattooed on my hand.
Yes. I have to remember them. I have to go through them. Please join us on Facebook. That's the only platform we're using at the moment.
I know.
Because I'm almost 50. Please join our Patreon.
Please.
Yeah.
And send us mail.
Send us mail through... You look at the show notes, there's all sorts of ways you can reach us through Facebook or email to my email address. You can even reach us on Twitter. I still have a Twitter account, so we're out there. Next week, we're going to do Sheena, a.k.a. Sheena, Queen of the Jungle from 1984.
Yes.
Starring Tanya Roberts. I've never seen it, but I've been looking forward to it because it looks really pretty awful.
Well, I think we've established that we love awful.
Well, you know what? I've often found part of the thing is, often the comic is good, or the movie is good. Like, it's usually it's one or the other. It's like it's worth coming in for the day's work. You know, it's worth coming in to record because the comic is really good, or half of the thing was really good.
Also, and our longer episodes tend to be the ones about things that we like, that are great and that we like.
Yeah.
But I'd never have quite as much fun as I do when we're talking about something terrible.
Yeah.
So I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Corned beef and cabbage ever since the world began. With corned beef and cabbage, Eve first tempted man. She tempted him with corned beef. She had it in the can, and the can came from the stockyards in New Orleans.